Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our fourth live stream broadcast from Rowe Gallery. We're outside in our beautiful courtyard just south of the gallery entrance, and we are so excited to be here. It's an amazing day, beautiful spring day. The only thing missing is you. I'm Ken, by the way, and this is Snickle Fritz. He's looking for his breakfast. I'm going to let him go. Oh, no. Okay. So did we say this is live? Yeah, this is live. Anyway, first and foremost, I hope all of you are doing well, and we're doing great. We're working, remotely from the gallery. Monica's here, like I said before, from 8 to 5. Shirley's here. We're all coming and going. And I just have to say, we are so blessed by the response we're getting from this live stream. It has gone way beyond my greatest expectations. And, I don't know if it's from being married for almost 40 years, but there are 4 words that come from my mouth quite often that Monica knows I'm going to say before I even open my mouth, and that is, we are so blessed, and we thank you. So, again, like I said last week, we're learning as we go. This is a whole new beast for me to learn, the live stream and making it more interactive, and I want it to be that way, so please chime in. Randy here, our right-hand guy, is going to convey any questions you have and comments. We'd love to acknowledge you and make this live and more interactive, so feel free. So if you haven't seen the previous 3 sessions, you can go to our Facebook account, click on the links, and you can see the 3 previous sessions. They're short and hopefully sweet, but I'm so excited to show you the progress we've made on this piece. So a brief overview is, I started with working with a live animal, and I sculpted a smaller version of this. Now I sculpted a little bit larger version for this commission and made a skeleton, an actual functioning skeleton. I scaled it all up to this size, and then I think I calculated today, about 280 hours later, we have what I'm going to show you. And so last week we worked on the face, and this week I fleshed out the body. So if you remember last week, I had already had this fleshed in, we worked on the face, and now I've worked my way back to probably adding another 100 pounds of clay on this thing, so it's getting very difficult to move. But what you're looking at is the hard anatomy. This is without skin or hair, so everything will get a little bit bigger, bulkier, and of course the hair patterns will show some of these muscles through. I can let them reflect through wherever I want as I'm working on the piece. It's all flexible. I can move the legs, arms, and everything else. So anyway, this is as far as I've gotten, and now probably this week coming up I'll work on the feet. And then we will show you the progression of that next week as well, as long as we can move it, because it's very, very heavy. So anyway, I can't wait to get to our next phase, and that is our guest artist. You probably guessed who it was just by my description of her paintings being as bright and lively as her personality. So, and by the way, this morning I looked up, and on my little phone it said the sunrise was at 5:30. But the sunrise was actually earlier when we brought these paintings out. This painter carries her own sunshine. And I'm not talking about the type you drink. I'm talking this kind of sunshine. And we are so proud to have her now for 4 years. She's just a ray of light for all of us in every way possible. Jen, this is Jen Farnsworth.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Ken and Monica. I'm thrilled to be here and so excited to add a little bit of color and sunshine to your Saturday morning, early Saturday morning. And I was just thrilled when Ken and Monica invited me to share a little bit with you about my creative process, my inspirations, and how I approach my art. So I feel honored to do that with you this morning. And of course, as you do with Ken, if you have any questions at all, I love that this is live, so I hope to answer your questions along the way. In a few minutes, we're going to do a little bit of work on this piece that I've started for you, which is another Don Coyote. Don is one of my favorite subject matters. He's a permanent resident at the Runnin W Wildlife Center in Cornville, which is just outside of Sedona. It's a place where Ken and I have both spent a lot of time observing the animals and working with Billy Harvey, who does so much with injured animals, bringing them back to good health and releasing them. And Don is sort of my good luck charm. And just as Ken starts with an armature, this is sort of Don Coyote's armature. This is how I start my paintings. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. I want to kind of go back to Ken's questions, one being my inspiration. And like so many artists, I have found so much inspiration in spending lots of time outdoors in nature, experiencing the landscape, and of course taking time to just enjoy all of the wildlife. And for me, as is probably true with a lot of people, sometimes it's hard for me to sit still and be quiet in nature. I have to remember that our voices are kind of scary to wildlife. But when you can just be calm and sit and enjoy, it comes to you. And we're so fortunate here in Arizona to have so much wonderful wildlife that we can be really close with. For example, the bunnies. Another one of my favorite subjects to paint are the deer. We have the beautiful mule deer that come through our yard, and I've just gotten to really appreciate and love them and want to capture their beauty and spirit through my art, like so many other artists. So that was a beginning inspiration, really my love of nature and wanting to translate that into art. And then, of course, I've developed so much inspiration from other artists. When I was first learning to paint, and I'm a self-taught painter, like so many before me, I really looked to the masters. And Van Gogh was a great inspiration to me. And I loved how he saw things differently and how he was able to translate his experiences into just beautiful, transformative art. I was very fortunate when I was younger that I worked at a small college that in Portland, Maine, that had the beautiful Irises painting, which I think is one of his most spectacular. And most people know you can see art in a book or in a photograph, but it's nothing like the experience of sitting in front of a beautiful masterpiece and being just truly captivated and transformed by that piece and seeing and feeling and experiencing what that artist did when they created that. So he, together with Picasso and Monet, were a couple of my early inspirations. And then as time went on and I became much more serious about my art, contemporary colorist and expressionist John Nieto, a Southwest artist, was very influential to me. I loved his boldness and his bravery in translating what he saw in a whole different way. Robert Daughters, another artist, Santa Fe artist, and then Jeff Ham, who also, to me, took his art to a whole different level and gave me permission to try things that maybe I wouldn't have dared to. Lessons learned in this whole process over the years. For me, practice, practice, practice. I can't tell you how many artworks wound up in closets, under my bed, hidden away because I didn't think they were very good. I had trouble translating what I saw to the canvas. But, you know, it's like anything. You just have to stick with it and stay with what you love. And that's what I always did and continued to pursue that. Yeah.
Folks just weighing in back with Ken's piece and yourself, some people coming in. I thought this was a wonderful comment from Lorna and Warren Greer, stating how they miss Sedona a little less because of these live streams.
Oh, that's great. Good morning, Lorna. Thank you for watching. We miss you. You know, so we're loving doing these. Ken and Monica putting these together so we can still reach out and connect with all of our clients we love so much. It's just been incredible for all of us and made these times so much easier. So thank you. So I'm thinking of questions that I often get about my art. And One of them is, how do you come up with the colors that you decide to use? And a lot of it is just trying to translate what I feel or experience when I'm either with the animal or in the landscape, and trying to translate those emotions onto the canvas. And that is really what colorists and expressionists do. They take their emotions and try to get you to feel the same thing that we're feeling, the boldness and the beauty. And sometimes it depends on the character of the animal, him or herself, because like with the deer, they are so beautiful but ever cautious. And the more you get to know them, the more you understand their personalities. But I wanted to paint art that really kind of conveys, for me, what it feels like when I'm watching the deer. And then Don Coyote, one of my favorite subjects, for him, he has different moods, like all coyotes. He can be mischievous, he can be very bold, curious, feisty. He has the whole range. So when I'm painting him, it kind of depends on the mood that he was in. Over the years, I've taken probably thousands of pictures of him, many, many sketches. And just to show you a little bit of how I start, that's another question that I get. How do I start my art? So like many artists, sometimes it's just a simple sketch. So this is a little Mischief Bunny, one of the bunnies we rehabbed. When I was getting ready to paint a painting of her, initially I just did very simple sketches. But oftentimes what I will do is I'm out with my markers and pens, and I'll do something very bold and brilliant. So here is just I just did it spur of the moment. That's my mother's rooster, Mr. Big Rooster. Yeah. Yes, I will do commissions, and as a matter of fact, some very, very dear clients. If you're with us this morning, Pat and Bruce, good morning. They have just commissioned me to do one of my favorite animals, a bunny. So we will be doing a very special bunny for them. I love to do commissions, and so I'm looking forward to that. And good morning, Pat and Bruce, if you're watching. And here's, you probably recognize this, the little eastern collared lizard, very colorful one. Tried to capture him. This is just a piece that I did for a Christmas card. But even when I'm sketching, I know that like Ken, when he's doing his sketches, he will often do them in clay, just little mini studies. And for me, I will experiment with the colors, see what works, what feels right, and oftentimes I'll then translate those into a painting. And so when I get ready to actually do an artwork, I will use and reference a combination of sketches and those photographs and study them. Now here's an example. I was getting ready to do a Don Coyote painting, and I spent a lot of time really studying his eyes, because that's really important to me. A lot of people comment that my art, the eyes really catch you, and for me it all starts there. And so when I put this little sketch together, excuse me, that's what I did. I started with his eyes. And in this reference painting photograph that I'm using, he's very calm and very peaceful that morning. So I wanted to kind of capture that with his eyes, and then I'll kind of go from there. Now, I also get asked, what is my palette like? And oftentimes when I want to do a really powerful piece, I will use colors straight out of the tube, and I don't mix them. And unlike a lot of artists, I don't start with just a few colors. I tend to start with a lot of colors because I find that inspires me. My favorite paints, I'm a big fan of Holbein. I love Holbein paints. I also love Old Holland. I find the colors very rich, very creamy. And those are two of my favorites. I also like Michael Harding and some of the others, but they're very expensive, so sometimes I do mix them. And I always paint with a medium. My favorite medium that I like is Galkid Light, which is not too thick, but it allows the paint to dry faster, and it also gives it a nice texture and consistency. And I used to use turpentine to clean my brushes. Now I use Gamsol. I like that because it's odorless. It doesn't clean the brushes quite as well, but it just has a nice quality to it, and it's not so hard on your brushes either.
Jen, we have Bruce and Pat Grainer.
Yes, good
Just
morning.
weighing in, saying they love seeing you and your beautiful pieces.
Good morning, Pat and Bruce. Great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. It's a good morning to Texas. So, so as I mentioned, what I do initially, typically, now if I'm doing a landscape, which I also love, I approach it differently. When I'm doing a landscape, I will tend to do the entire canvas, and I will get my rough shapes. I don't do an armature, as I explained with Dawn. I will just rough colors in, and I will work dark to light. Oftentimes, like many artists, I will underpaint the entire canvas. So I'll pick a color, do the entire canvas, let's just say like a yellow or a pink or something like that. But sometimes I like the brightness that the white paint will give you in lifting the colors. And I always paint outside. I am a plein air painter, and I love the light and the character that it gives. But I learned something from one of my fellow painters here in the gallery, Lynn Heil, who's absolutely wonderful. I know he'll be joining this at some point. And he made the comment that when he's painting plein air, he finds that the paintings look quite dark when he brings them inside sometimes. And we have to remember that because there's so much light when you're painting outside, that you're not going to have quite the same experience when you go inside. So that was good. That was a good little bit of information. So what I would do next, I spend quite a bit of time if I'm using a reference photograph as opposed to a sketch. And when I'm doing sketches, my art would tend to be a little bit not look quite so realistic, but I'll pick out elements that I particularly want to highlight and think about the color that might make sense for that particular feature. So as I look at this and what I've started, I really want to frame his face. And I'm looking at these different elements. So, and you know I love blue. So let's just take a little bit of blue here. And that's a pretty light feature. And I'm just going to start to rough in that.
Shirley Albrecht weighed in, saying happy Saturday to you, Jen.
Happy Saturday, Shirley. Good morning. Great to have you with us. Now, one thing that I think all of us as artists are a little bit guilty of is put it on the canvas and then let it be. It's so that's something that, you know, we all to work with, not messing with it too much. I'm guilty of that myself.
Jen, how many days will it take for a piece like this?
You know, it just depends. How many days will it take for a piece like this? It just depends. Sometimes I feel like I really haven't captured what I want to capture, and it can take me sometimes weeks, sometimes a year. This painting, I think it took me a few months to do, and like many artists, I will frequently do a little bit on, I'll have several pieces going at the same time. I'll work a little bit on a piece, then I will step back and put it aside and then go back to it and start to work on it again. I use, one of my favorite brushes is our flat, bright brushes. I love those, which has a nice flat surface to it, gives you good texture.
Jen, will this particular painting be available?
Yes, yes it will. Yes it will. Now I'm just trying to capture, we all know the, for coyote, they have, you know, the mask. So here I'm doing the highlights there. For his mouth. Now looking at his face, also what are the elements that really kind of stand out in this. And his muzzle is another. So I'm going to give him some good blue down here. He's going to be a blue coyote. Frequently when I get going on a piece, especially after I get into it, I'll find myself kind of moving away from the reference material. Sometimes art takes on a life of its own, and you kind of have to go with that and just follow your instincts. One of my favorite colors to use is cobalt blue. I love cobalt blue. I'm also using a phthalo blue, which I like as well. I'm looking at his, let's get a little bit more of a shadow in there.
Jen, will you be able to see the progress
So,
between this week and next week?
So what we're planning to do, and Randy was just asking about progress, I'm going to be working on it this week, and then come back to you next weekend, and you'll see I'll have a lot of this worked in. I'm going to leave the background out. We'll together perhaps decide what we're going to do for the background. I'm going to put in a little bit now. Another color that I really, really like is quinacridone magenta. And so what I use here, I've got my medium, my solvent.
Bruce is asking if you ever work on more than one piece at a time, Jen.
Yes, thank you, Bruce. I do. I will tend to have 2 or 3 at least going at the same time, so that I don't lose kind of my inspiration. I like to work on one for a little bit and then step back and work on another. So I'm going to do a little, I'm using magenta here. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do for his nose here. Purple. I've really been liking working with magenta lately. A little bit. His nose is going to be purple, I think. Yeah.
Diana Milenkovic is saying good morning.
Good morning, Diana. How are you? Thank you for joining us. I think I'll do one more little bit on his nose, and so looking at Don's nose, kind of the darkest part here, so I'm going to go pretty dark with the underlying color. A little bit of Prussian blue, which is an old-fashioned color. So Dawn is starting to come together. All right. Well, here he is. We're going to get ready to take a break here. And I want to thank you all for joining us. You see where he is. I'm going to do some work with him over the course of this next week. So the next time I see you, he will be looking very different. He won't be looking like an armature at all. And thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you, Ken and Monica. And it's been wonderful to be here in beautiful Tlaquepaque Arts and Crafts Center. And thank you. Oh, any questions before we go? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Saturday. Be safe. We'll see you next week. Was it- I felt like a